Some people question God for placing the forbidden among the encouraged, but they fail to grasp the beauty of God's gift of choice. Were there no forbidden tree, there would have been no choice. The opportunity to choose elevates the elements of commitment and worship to the level of intentional actions. What a delight to know that God chose me, and what an expression of true worship to choose God by our own will and volition. Choice sweetens the strains of praise and worship, and it defines the consequences of making bad choices. Choices have consequences. Choices have consequences. How important it is for us to embrace the beautiful gift of choice. God gave us and make right choices with positive consequences because of God's first gift of choice. We now have the opportunity to make positive choices in life that will benefit our lives eternally. Here's the thought of the day, sponsored by Vaughn Ministries. And now here's
Freedom of choice. Psalm 119:30 says, I have chosen the way of truth. Your judgments have laid before me. Genesis 2:8-9. And the Lord planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made the Lord to grow every tree that is planted to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then dropping down to verse 16, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it. For in the day that you do eat thereof, you will surely die. The prophet Ezekiel wrote, and they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. God created man with a freedom of choice. His will is that we choose him with a heart of love. You know, we make a multitude of choices every day. What time shall I get up in the morning? Do I hit the snooze just once or maybe more? What am I going to wear to work? Breakfast or no breakfast? Music or talk radio? Coffee? Will it be tall? Will it be grande? We haven't even gotten to work yet, and all the choices that we have made. And we did what we wanted to do so far. Most of the daily choices that we make fade into insignificance. They simply don't matter much. However, it is vital to understand that God has placed into our hands choices that do have consequences in our life. They also have eternal ramifications. These choices will affect our destiny. There were two significant trees in the Garden of Eden. There was the tree of life, and then there was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It kind of amazes me that of all the trees in the garden, and you could freely eat of all of them, with the exception of one tree out of all of them is the only thing you had to abstain from. But it was your choice. You could eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil or not. But if you do, there will be consequences. Let's talk about the tree of life. The Apostle Peter stated, according as his divine power hath given unto us all things that pertain unto life and godliness, through the knowledge of him that hath called us to glory and virtue. The tree of life is pretty significant in that while mankind lived in the garden and had access to the tree of life, they would live forever. but once departed where they could not partake of the tree of life, and then, of course, life began to diminish to death. And then there was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We must understand that free will and choice produce life lessons. Free will and choice determine destinies. And the carnal nature of man has got to be considered. The carnal nature of humans is resident in every one of us. It clouds our thinking. It leads in a path away from that which pertains to spiritual things. Within every choice a Christian makes, it is an ongoing struggle. Paul wrote in Galatians, the sinful nature wants to do evil, which is just the opposite of what the Spirit wants. The Spirit gives us desires that are opposite of what the sinful nature desires. These two forces are constantly fighting each other, so you are not free to carry out your good intentions. On this side of Calvary, we enjoy a new dynamic. The power of New Testament salvation has made us alive. You has He quickened is the glorious promise of God to believers. The born-again believer enjoys a regenerated spirit, but he still faces the ongoing conflict between his desire to follow God and his sinful flesh. Deuteronomy 30:19 says, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and your seed may live. It seems to be such a clear-cut decision. One choice leads to blessing, the other choice leads to cursing. One option is life, the other option is death. The choice is clear, but it's ours to make. God desires a relationship with mankind, but again, choices have consequences. The good news is we can choose. Remember what the old Pastor Baker said, when you've done everything to stand, keep on keeping on. I encourage you to visit an evangelical church this Sunday and fellowship with people of faith where you can find inspiration. Meet the pastor and leadership team of that church who can come beside you in a time of stress. God bless you and have a great week.